Okay, so let's put the foot on the machine. There we go. No IDF for this, so I'm going to leave that well out of the way. What I am going to do first is pull up the bottom thread. I don't really want a knot there, so I'm just going to hold on to this top thread, needle down, needle up, foot up. That should let me pull that through, and there is a little tail end of bottom thread there as well, so just get hold of that. There we go. So I've got both ends now. It's just going to help us get it started. Now, there's two ways of using this gathering foot. We can either just gather a piece of fabric, or we can gather a piece of fabric and we can sew it to something else that stays flat. So we're going to have a go at both. We're going to do the simple one first. They're both pretty simple, they're both the same process really. But we need to set up the stitch. So I'm going to go for a normal straight stitch. I'm going to lengthen it up. Instructions normally say between 3 and 6 millimeters, and it depends on how much of a gather you want. The longer the stitch length, the more the gather. I'm going to take it up to 5, and I'm also going to push my needle all the way across to the left as far as it will go. You will find it's much easier to control the fabric if you're not stitching right close to the edge of it, and I want all the feed dogs to be in contact with the fabric and be pulling it through. So last step is up the top tension. Now for a standard straight stitch on this machine it's 4.6. I'm actually going to take it up to 6.8 on this occasion, and I'm ready to go. So can you see this slot here? Okay, I'm going to line up with the edge of that slot, not the outside edge of the foot, but the slot. Okay, let's put the foot down. Now you need to set your speed nice and slow. This isn't something you can rush, so I'm going to go to the speed control here and take it down as low as it will go. I'm ready to sew. Needle down, foot pedal, and yes, you need to sort of direct this, but keep a gentle handle on it, because if you're pulling on it, it's not going to gather as much. So yes, it's telling me the dual feed isn't set, but we've already said that we don't use that on this particular foot. Okay, so already you can you see now why you need to go slow? It wants to go over here, but can you see what's happening at the back? Now this works really well on light to medium weight fabrics, but if you can even gather upholstery fabric, if you put a finger at the back there just to let the fabric pile up against it, then it will gather. It's really, really important, say, just to take your time and keep a constant speed, and that was the reason that I took the speed right down as low as it could go, because then you can actually put your foot on the pedal and just leave it there. You don't have to think about whether you've got to lift off, press further down. If it's on dead slow and you've got your foot flat to the floor, you haven't got to think about it. So I'm going to lift my needle up, I'm going to lift my foot up, and I'm going to pull my piece of fabric out. And I've not used the thread cutters and want to use the ends again, but there you go, you can see that's gathered up beautifully. Now if you're doing this on a garment, you're going to need to think about how much fabric you've got to gather and what space, how long it was to start with and how long it wants to be when you've finished. So you need to do perhaps a little bit of maths, but a bit of trial and error on a small piece, measuring it at the beginning and then again at the end, you'll be able to work out what your settings need to be on your machine. So this is only quilting weight cotton. It's not particularly lightweight. If you're doing that on cotton lawn, you could get a very, very tight gather. but you can do it on much thicker fabrics. And I say that tip about putting your finger behind the foot and letting the fabric pile up against it and just releasing it every now and again really works wonders. Very, very good tip. So having established that we can actually gather the fabric up, I'm now going to gather it and sew it to something else at the same time. So I'm going to just put my fabric underneath the foot that I'm going to gather face up like we did last time, so foot down. And we talked about this slot earlier. This is where the fabric that's going to stay flat goes, and it goes face down. So if I put that in there, and you need to match the edges. Now we're going to have a little bit of fun with this because of course the bottom fabric is going to be gathering up and the top one isn't, and you obviously need to bear that in mind as you're holding the fabric in the way that you're holding it. So I'm going to just grab hold of my ends there. I'm going to do needle down, and now I'm just going to start stitching. Once I've actually got it started, I'm going to let go of those thread ends. There we go. Right. Just push that across slightly. That's it. Okay. So I'm going to just keep a bit of pressure on this top fabric just to keep it into the groove here, but I've also got to control the bottom one. So I'm just going to keep a finger there to stop it coming over too much. See where I'm going with this? Now that's started, I can hold that. Yeah, covering off a little, aren't you? There we go. It's a little bit of practice and a little bit of getting it started. I'm going to stop at that. Enough there, but you can see I had a much longer piece of gathering fabric than I did top fabric. There we go. If I open that out, how fab does that look? Very, very clever. But as I say, the trick to this is keep it slow, keep it steady, just take your time, and don't let the machine run away with you, and you can basically, that saves you a whole lot of stitching, pulling up, pinning, all sorts of things that you don't necessarily need to do.